Okay there, hello once again, and this is the perils of full tilt poker rush style. So if you're a fan of rush poker, this is what could happen, but it is my fault. You've got to be religious with rush poker, and you've got to play your hands a certain way. Big hands, you've got to raise pre-flop. I had a pair of kings, so I did raise. I raised 5 times the big blind. Somebody re-raises over the top of me, which means that he's got a big hand as well. So I just decided to flat call it. The flop turns up, and it's quite a good flop for me. But instead of betting, which you should normally do in this situation when the flop comes out, I decided to just check it. This guy then takes the initiative, but I still think I'm ahead, so I call it. The next card is a king, a fantastic card for me, one that I should bet big on. Oh look, I just checked. Why the hell did I do that? Mistake, because this guy gets to see a free card. The flop, the river, sorry, turns up with a 10 of hearts. Now this is a bit of a pain because it could release flush opportunities, but now I act, and I act slightly too late because this guy calls, and as you can see, he had ace queen all along. If I had bet on the turn when I was ahead, and if I'd have bet the pot, he might have folded out because there was nothing for him. He had 4 outs at that point. Just managed to hit that out, and he won a big pot. This is another situation where if you do adhere to the rules, you will win, or you should win. Okay, this is a situation where I have 10, so once again raising. I get a caller straight behind me. Flop, I've got the overpair, which is great, so I bet. He calls. Turn, another overcard, which is fine. I don't mind him when they're low. I bet. He calls. There are flushes, and there's other draws out there. The 4 is probably a good card for me, so I bet again 50. I mean I'm betting small here, but he then raises me, which then makes me think, oh, has he got a 4? He might have an 8. He might have a 9. He might have a higher overpair. I tend to think he might have ace king, ace queen, so I call it, and he has jack 9. I still win the hand, but that's how to play a little bit more aggressively and win those hands in rush poker. Once again, this is another way how to play it and how not to play big hands, as I explained with my kings. This time I get pocket aces. Somebody raises behind me, which is really a good sign, so I can re-raise after them, knowing that they're probably going to call with any sort of pair or an ace with a kicker high enough. Somebody else calls as well, which is even better. So we've got 3 people in. I've got me aces. No real scare cards there. So check, check. I bet the pot. I get a caller, which is slightly worrying. There's flush draw opportunities there. Next card comes up is a 10. We then enter the realms of maybe they've got a straight or maybe they haven't. I'm still thinking they might have an ace with another card. I do then tip all in. So I'm thinking they might have an ace king, ace queen. They decide to call it. They've got ace 9 actually. So they kind of played it well. But this is where you get caught out in rush poker. The other cards are 10. I end up with over $20 in chips, thank you very much, and that is the way to play rush poker. You've got to play aggressively pre-flop, and then continue with the bets if you still think you're ahead. Don't let them get into control, especially if you're in position. Also, you can take into account that sometimes, most of the time on rush poker, people will bet with ace king, ace queen, ace jack, and they will bet pre-flop. I mean, this is an example of that, where you can win with a slightly lower kicker. I mean, I was in big blind. Normally I'd probably fold this if I was in any other situation, but because he bet so small, I decided to call it. The flop is a dream because it means I've got 2 pair there, and if he's got ace king, ace queen, ace jack, I've got him beat. So I bet again. He calls. The turn is a jack. Once again, I'm thinking ace king, ace queen, ace jack. I bet slightly more this time to try and put him off the hand in case he has got it, but he just flat calls again. The river card, there's a flush out there, but I don't think he's got the flush. If he's got ace king now, I'm beat and fair dues. He's ended up in the hand. I bet slightly larger again, but nothing too major. He calls. He turns over ace queen, so I was slightly lucky, but I do win because I have the 9. So sometimes it does work in your favour if they've got ace king or ace queen, and if I had, for example, a set of 6s in that position, I would have dominated him throughout the whole of that hand. He wouldn't have known that. But it's an idea sometimes in rush poker to play those lower value cards, because you know that they're going to have big value cards, and if you hit in your flop, you might win big. Case in point again, this is I'm not in this hand, 6-3, I'm out of it, but I just wanted to show you this because this is quite a big pot and it plays on the fact that people will play any high cards on rush poker, so ace kings, ace queens, ace jacks, and if you've got something else, it can be beneficial depending on what the flop, turn and river produce. So in this situation, I've got no idea what each person has, but I'm assuming that the first guy that's bet might have an ace king, the other guy calls. You know, there's aces in those hands that they've got. The turn card, he just flat checks. This other guy, Kells, then decides to bet, and Van City South decides to call it. And then the river card is an 8. It's not really a scary board, really. There's nothing really out there if you're playing. The thing is, who's got the ace king? There's a check there, there's a bet, the guy decides to call, and there you have it. Van City Scutch, or whatever his name was, had the smaller hand pre-flop, decided to call it. Post-flop, he then decides to keep himself in the hand as long as possible because he's got a top pair, and he finds out that the other guy's got an ace queen. So sometimes it does work in your favour, especially if you're in the blinds, just to call it, especially if it's only a small raise, and then hopefully you might hit something on the flop, and then you win because they're thinking their ace king or ace queen's good. So final example then, this ends with a pair of queens. I started with a pair of kings which I lost on because I played too slowly. This is how you really should play at full tilt poker. Situation where I've got queens, I raise pre-flop, the flop comes up and I hit my set once again. The guy checks. That's what you do, you bet. They call it. I'm hoping they're on an ace. We then have a 10 of diamonds. That's a scare card because if they've got a king, king jack, or they could have queen 10 or ace 10. So this is where I'm thinking I might be slightly behind. They check. Well, I'm not slightly behind actually. I've just realised I've got the set. But I'm thinking maybe ace 10. But it's still, there's a possibility of a straight there. I decide to bet and then scare them off, and then they go away. That's the way you really should play full tilt poker. You should be betting your hands quite aggressively pre-flop and post-flop. Don't slow play on rush poker. It's a bit ironic, I know. Do not slow play on rush poker because people are going to try and hit their draws, hit their flushes, hit their straights. So bet big and hopefully you'll win big.